was right. Humanity's savage nature will inevitably lead to global annihilation. So in order to save this planet, I had to trick it with the greatest practical joke in human history.
Killing millions.
To save billions. A necessary crime.
You know we can't let you do that.
Do that, Rorschach? I'm not a comic book villain. Do you seriously think I'd explain my masterstroke to you if there were even the slightest possibility you could affect the outcome? I triggered it 35 minutes ago.
Hey guys, Saeed here. Welcome to Psychology of Spirituality. So in our last video series, we covered spiritual bypassing, or the tendency of people to use spirituality as a way to sidestep actual psychological, emotional, social work that will give them flourishment in their lives. Today, and in this video series, we're going to talk about narcissism. First, by talking about narcissism as a psychological construct, and then in our next series, we're going to talk about spiritual narcissism and the solutions we can use to ameliorate this tendency that many of us go through, right? Spiritual journey, we start growing our hair long, we start getting into these very intellectual, philosophical spaces. We start looking down at people, which is not conducive towards what spirituality and most spiritual disciplines want from their people, and that's ego destruction, right? We start recognizing that all human beings, and maybe even all sentient creatures, are part of the same shared essence, the same collective conscious, the same soul network that we're all a part of. So I've been reading this book called The Narcissism Epidemic by Dr. Twenge and Dr. Campbell, which I'm linking right here. And it contextualizes where this rise of narcissism comes from. Within a culture that celebrates self-esteem, materialism, shallow values, and this loving yourself ideal that's part of American and Western society, above and beyond caring for others. So before we begin, it's important to differentiate between narcissism as a personality trait that we may engage in from time to time, and narcissistic personality disorder, or NPD. So NPD is meeting a specific criteria in the DSM for one's narcissistic behaviors being intense enough, present for long enough, and manifesting across enough or various contexts and environments that it causes impairment to someone's functioning, right? So it causes depression, it causes financial issues, it causes a lack of personal relationships. So narcissists aren't the most willing to go to a psychologist to ask for help, as most people aren't, because of health insurance and because of judgment and shame. So this plays into a concept called the hindsight bias, right? It's much easier in the short term to wait for our problems to amount up before having to deal with them, but in the long run, it's much more detrimental towards who we are. Spirituality, mindfulness are part of a preventative ecological framework of embedding resources, tools for people to utilize before these problems and symptoms get to a point where they're very deeply, persistingly impairing someone's functioning. We also have two major types of narcissistic personality disorder, although there are others as accounted in this video right here. We have an extroverted, outgoing type, which we usually associate with narcissism, right? Someone who's too overly confident, arrogant.
I believe in taking care of myself, in a balanced diet, and a rigorous exercise routine. In the morning, if my face is a little puffy, I'll put on an ice pack while doing my stomach crunches. I can do 1,000 now. There is an idea of a Patrick Bateman, some kind of abstraction, but there is no real me, only an entity, something illusory. And though I can hide my cold gaze, and you can shake my hand and feel flesh gripping yours, and maybe you can even sense our lifestyles are probably comparable, I simply am not there.
But we also have a vulnerable narcissistic type. And I like to think of this as like this nice guy trope, which is part of like our culture. They don't appear any more or any less confident or arrogant than any other person, but they're still manipulating others to primarily validate their existence, right? So other people are just a means to some ends, and that ends is usually validating who they are.
He's not like the other guys. Seriously.
No, what? Annie, you really pissed me off, because they shit all over everybody, including you. I can't believe you'd be this stupid.
Who's shitting on me? I'm not gonna let anybody shit on me.
He's gonna use your ass and throw you away. God, I would have died for you.
So what am I supposed to do? He asked me out and I like him. If I hate him because he's got money, just listen to me. If I hate him because he's got money, that's the exact same thing as them hating us because we don't. Do you understand?
You can't do this and respect yourself. You can't.
Well, I'll make that decision, all right?
Sure, you can do what you want. So when you get your heart splattered all over hell and you're feeling really low and dirty, don't look to me to help pump you back up, cause maybe for the first time in your life I won't be there.
Can't believe you're actually saying this.
Well, I guess that's just tough shit.
But apart from an actual personality diagnosis, we all exhibit narcissistic traits or tendencies to some degree or another: entitlement, exploiting others for gain, arrogance, envy, dependence on others for validation, lack of empathy, and callousness. A few of these are also associated with being a psychopath and Machiavellianism, which I've detailed in my personality video here. This book, The Narcissism Epidemic, also details a heightened rise of values associated with narcissism, such as young people as compared to 40, 50 years ago, currently rating and endorsing wanting lots of money, wanting to become famous, wanting social status as their major values, their major goals for life. And I've discussed this prior in relation to the systems level change needed to upend our materialistic lifestyles apart from soul individual change. Like no matter how much we try to become more mindful and more spiritual, if our society is sick or some parts of it are sick, then it will continue infesting our inner nature because we participate in this society as active members. But for the purposes of this video, what is narcissism? So this book is really great because it details the paradoxes associated with narcissism and materialism. One thing I always bring up with young people is that endorsing higher materialistic attitudes is actually correlated with decreased performance in schools and in jobs, which is very ironic because getting a degree or even working at a skills or trade job is one of the most concrete and sure ways to attain some material wealth. But because narcissists have an overinflated sense of themselves, they think that they're doing well when they're actually not, and people are able to see through that veneer, that disguise, right? Narcissists usually tend to have a poor history. They don't have a good history of deep and meaningful relationships since they opt for quicker, more superficial engagements built on utilitarian benefits, which just means, and I saw this when I was in my early 20s, where you would go to these networking parties and it's just like, oh, who's that person? Oh, that person has this many followers and that many followers. That was a very toxic space to get into, right? Because it's that person is only useful insofar as they can get me something, which is very common in our society, right? But again, we need to ask ourselves, does that match with your values? For me, it didn't, which is why it was causing me anxiety, right? That's called cognitive dissonance. So you need to change that behavior to match with your values.
So you've actually never been to a real school before? Shut up. Shut up!
I didn't say anything.
Homeschooled. That's really interesting.
Thanks.
You're like really pretty.
Thank you.
So you agree?
What?
You think you're really pretty?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh my god, I love your bracelet. Where did you get it?
Oh, my mom made it for me.
It's adorable.
So fetch.
What is fetch?
Oh, it's like slang from England.
So if you're from Africa, why are you white?
Oh my god, Karen, you can't just ask people why they're white.
Could you give us some privacy for like 1 second?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, you should just know that we don't do this a lot, so this is like a really huge deal.
We want to invite you to have lunch with us every day for the rest of the week.
Oh, it's okay. Coolness. So we'll see you tomorrow.
On Wednesdays, we wear pink.
Narcissists are also routinely rated less on integrity, especially when they're in leadership roles. And there's lots of studies on CEOs and what makes a good CEO. It's actually those who are compassionate, those who aren't narcissists, those who have good interpersonal leadership styles, make for better CEOs, especially because they tend to have less levels of volatility and instability, right? They tend to have more stable positions. The companies tend to be more stable, which makes sense, right? Narcissists opt for short-term benefit over long-term thinking. So why are we becoming more narcissistic? I know that social media is the easy answer. All like older people are just like social media. But we should delve deeper into the mechanism of action by which engaging in a behavior like heightened social media usage can be detrimental, not all the time, but can be detrimental to ourselves and our community and our world. Firstly, why are we engaging in narcissistic behaviors? Because they feel good, like gambling, pornography usage, multiple sexual relationships, binge drinking, repeatedly checking the amount of followers that we have, the likes that we're getting. These are all tied with our dopaminergic responses, which must intensify to be maintained for the same amount of feel-good chemicals. Narcissism is associated with many destructive behaviors, like using others, right? It provides short-term benefits. You take someone's money, for example, you get sexual benefits from someone, but in the long run, you lose self-respect or you damage your community. This is one of the main reasons why narcissistic behaviors and NPD is associated with heightened depression, anxiety, and even suicide. You can expend so much energy trying to maintain this facade of being super cool, good looking, successful financially, having this really good social status, but eventually it catches up with you. Your personal and professional life deteriorates and you are left all alone. And I've talked about existentialism and this ego energy, this death drive that we all have, which manifests through self-destructive behaviors in this video right here. More so, it causes a negative feedback loop. Right? Narcissists tend not to have a great history of introspection or self-awareness. They aren't equipped with the necessary cognitive or emotional or spiritual tools to deal with problems in a pro-social manner, right?
Slow down. Let's give her a ride.
She's like 2.8.
Come on!
I didn't even do anything! But as long as I get to the wedding, do the speech, they'll overlook the 2.8. I'm with the bride, and if I do well, they're all high 4, so that velocitates my arc. And once they lift the point penalty, well, then my average goes way up, and yeah, it's gonna be okay.
God, you remind me of me. Not now. I was 4.6 once.
So because they don't have those necessary tools, that leads to further isolation or self-harm. For example, drinking is a very common coping method for many people, right? But many people tend to have a variety of different coping mechanisms, with drinking being one of them. For many narcissists, for many people who have poor social relationships, they tend to rely solely on drugs and alcohol as their main coping mechanism, which leads to further isolation and harm. That's a negative feedback loop, right? It's just like the Aurora Boreal cycle eating itself, right? Leads to constant destruction and shame. So what are the solutions? I would say spirituality, but as noted, without the proper framework, a narcissist or someone who is going through a period of narcissistic behaviors will only use spirituality or mindfulness or even religion as another way to gain ego strength in the short run and burn out and self-destruct in the long run. So stay tuned for our next part where we'll delve deeper into spiritual narcissism and humility. So thank you guys so much for joining us for today's video. As always, I leave a bunch of content for you guys to explore your own philosophy, even your own narcissism. I have the Narcissism Personality Inventory linked in the description. That's important for us all to understand where our narcissistic baseline is. And also, it also fluctuates also, right? Some people are really intensely working on developing their professional identity, right? There may be a healthy level of egotism there, right? But it's all about channeling it in a pro-social manner, which I'll talk about in the next video. So thank you guys, subscribe and support, and I will see you on the next video. Thank you.